Star Wars has given us many stories over the years, some great, some disappointing, but none have ever come close to the masterpiece that is The Clone Wars. A show that took everything we thought we knew about the prequels and turned it into something deeper, richer, and more powerful than we ever expected. It wasn't just a series about battles, it was a story about war, loss, betrayal, and the slow destruction of everything good in the galaxy. It made us care about characters we had never given a second thought to. It expanded the lore in ways that made Star Wars feel more alive than ever before. This show took what the movies started and made it something legendary. It gave the clones personalities. It gave Anakin true depth. It gave Ahsoka an unforgettable journey. It took Palpatine's plan and made it feel more terrifying, made the Jedi's downfall feel more tragic, and made Order 66 one of the most heartbreaking moments in Star Wars history. For 7 seasons, we watched a war that was never meant to be one. We saw the Republic fight for a future that was already lost. We saw heroes make impossible choices, and we saw friendships broken by the cruel reality of fate. The Clone Wars didn't just fill in gaps, it redefined what Star Wars storytelling could be, and that's why this show is the best thing to ever come out of Star Wars. Nothing else has ever captured the depth, the emotion, and the sheer brilliance of this series. So today, we're going to break down exactly why The Clone Wars is not just a great show, but the greatest show in all of Star Wars. The Clone Wars gave the clones something they never had before: individuality. They were never meant to be unique, never meant to have names, and yet, we got to know them as real people. The movies barely scratched the surface, but the show proved that these soldiers were more than just expendable troops. Each clone had their own personality, their own struggles, and their own fate. Rex was a leader who balanced duty with morality. Fives was a fighter who refused to be a pawn, and Echo was a survivor who was forced to become something else. The tragedy of their existence was that no matter how much they tried to be their own person, they were always caught in a war they had no control over. Watching them struggle with orders, question their purpose, and even turn against their own commanders was heartbreaking. It made their inevitable fate even more painful, because we knew they never had a choice. They were created for one purpose, and that purpose would always be their undoing. This show made us love them, root for them, and in the end, mourn them. No other Star Wars story has ever done that for the clones. Anakin was never a simple character, but the Clone Wars took his complexity to a whole new level. The movies told us he was a great warrior who fell to the dark side, but the show showed us why. It gave us years of his life, years of victories, losses, and choices that shaped him into the person we knew he would become. We got to see him as a mentor, a brother, a hero. He wasn't just a Jedi, he was the Jedi. He led his men with passion, fought with fury, and cared more than any Jedi ever should. And yet, the cracks were always there. His anger, his attachment, his refusal to accept failure. It was all leading to something inevitable. What made it so tragic was that we saw how much good he did. He saved lives, inspired loyalty, and even questioned the flaws of the Jedi Order. If the Republic had been different, if the Jedi had been different, maybe he would have been different too. But that was never the story that was being told. The Clone Wars didn't change his fate, but it made it feel so much heavier. When he fell, it wasn't just a Sith Lord corrupting a Jedi, it was the loss of a man we had come to know and understand. Ahsoka was never supposed to work. A young Jedi apprentice, introduced out of nowhere, a character no one asked for, a character people expected to hate. And yet, she became one of the greatest characters in Star Wars. Her journey from an inexperienced, reckless Padawan to a wise and independent warrior was one of the best character arcs in the entire franchise. She made mistakes, she learned, and she changed. She wasn't just a sidekick to Anakin, she became her own person, a Jedi in everything but name. When the Jedi betrayed her, when they abandoned her without hesitation, it was one of the most painful moments in the show. She walked away, not because she was weak, but because she realized the Order wasn't what she thought it was. And that choice made her one of the strongest characters in the saga. She was proof that you didn't need to be a Jedi to be a hero. And in the end, she was more of a Jedi than most of the Order ever was. Star Wars has always been about war, but the Clone Wars made it feel real. The battles weren't just background noise. They had weight, they had meaning. We saw the cost of war, the destruction, the fear, the hopelessness. In every battle, someone lost. A planet was burned, a leader was assassinated, a civilization was destroyed. The show didn't shy away from the horrors of war. It showed us what it meant to be caught in the middle, to fight for a cause you don't understand, to watch your friends die for something that may not even matter. And the worst part was that it was all a lie. The Republic, the Separatists, the Jedi, the Sith, it was all just a game being played by someone else. The war was never meant to be one, only to destroy, to weaken, to corrupt. There was never going to be a victory, only an ending. And that realization made the entire show feel more tragic than any other Star Wars story. The Clone Wars didn't just show us the downfall of Anakin, it showed us the downfall of the Jedi Order itself. The Order was supposed to be the guardians of peace, the protectors of the galaxy. And yet, they became warriors, generals in a war they should have never fought. They lost themselves. They became so consumed by duty, by war, by politics, that they stopped being what they were meant to be. They failed the Republic, they failed the people, and worst of all, they failed themselves. When Order 66 happened, it wasn't just a betrayal. It was the final consequence of years of arrogance, of blindness, of refusal to change. The Jedi had chances to see what was happening, chances to stop it, and they didn't. That's what made their fall so tragic. They weren't defeated by the Sith, they were defeated by their own failures. A story is only as strong as its villains, and the Clone Wars had some of the best. Count Dooku wasn't just a Sith, he was a fallen Jedi who saw the corruption of the Order. Asajj Ventress wasn't just an assassin, she was a warrior who was abandoned, betrayed, and left to find her own way. Maul was something else entirely. He wasn't supposed to survive, and yet he came back more terrifying, more broken, more desperate than ever. He wasn't just a Sith anymore, he was something worse. A monster created by the dark side, fueled by vengeance and loss. And then there was Palpatine, the true mastermind. Every episode, every arc, every battle was his victory. He played everyone, manipulated everyone, and when the time came, he didn't just win, he erased everything that came before him. The villains weren't just obstacles. They were some of the most compelling characters in the entire series. Politics in Star Wars has always been a complicated subject. The prequels tried to show the corruption of the Republic, but it often felt dull and disconnected. The Clone Wars, however, made the politics matter. Every decision, every law, every betrayal had a real impact. We saw how the Republic was crumbling from within. Corrupt senators, power-hungry officials, and a Jedi Order that was too blind to see the game being played around them. The Separatists weren't just villains. Many of them had real reasons to leave the Republic. The war wasn't just good versus evil. It was a conflict where both sides were being manipulated by the same enemy. Characters like Padme and Bail Organa fought against the system, but it was never enough. The Republic was doomed the moment the war started, and no amount of political maneuvering could stop it. Watching these leaders struggle, knowing they would fail, added an extra layer of tragedy to the entire show. The fall of the Republic wasn't just about the Jedi or the Sith. It was about a system that had already rotted from the inside, and that made Palpatine's victory feel all the more terrifying. The Clone Wars started with a style that many people doubted. The early seasons were rough, the animation was stiff, and the character models felt limited. But over time, the show evolved. By the final season, the animation was some of the best in Star Wars history. The battles were breathtaking. Every explosion, every lightsaber duel, every chase scene was filled with stunning detail. The way the clones moved, the way the ships flew, the way the Jedi fought it, all felt real. The final duels, especially Ahsoka versus Maul, were some of the most beautifully choreographed fights ever seen in the franchise. And the emotions, the expressions, the body language, the subtle shifts in a character's face, it all added so much depth. When a character was afraid, you could see it in their eyes. When they were angry, you could feel the tension in their movements. When they were heartbroken, you didn't need words to understand their pain. The Clone Wars wasn't just well written, it was a visual masterpiece. The animation brought Star Wars to life in a way that no other show ever has, and it's hard to imagine anything ever surpassing it. The final season was perfect. Every episode, every moment, every choice led to a conclusion that was both heartbreaking and inevitable. We always knew how it would end, but that didn't make it hurt any less. Watching Ahsoka and Rex fight to survive Order 66 was some of the most emotional storytelling in Star Wars. Seeing the clones turn, seeing the war end in betrayal, seeing the weight of everything come crashing down, it was devastating. And that final scene, Ahsoka standing over the graves of the clones, Vader finding her lightsaber in the snow. No words, no explanation, just silence and loss. It was one of the most powerful endings in all of Star Wars. The Clone Wars didn't just tell a story, it gave Star Wars the ending it always deserved. No Star Wars show has ever done what the Clone Wars did. It took everything we loved about the movies and made it better. It deepened the lore, expanded the universe, and gave us characters we will never forget. It made us think, it made us feel. It made us see Star Wars in a way we never had before. The battles, the betrayals, the victories, and the losses. It all meant something. There has never been another Star Wars story that captured so much emotion, so much depth, so much storytelling brilliance. It wasn't just a show. It was Star Wars at its very best. And no matter what comes next, nothing will ever replace it. Thanks so much for watching. I spend a good bit of time making sure each video is great. If you enjoyed this video, Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It really helps out and means a lot to me. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.